Hi students, today I have with me as my very special guest Anna Brown, who is the Director of Legal Advocacy at the Human Rights Law Centre. Anna, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well Anna, you've been working with the Human Rights Law Centre for about 7 years now, and I guess you're most famous, if I can use that expression, for being at the forefront of the fight in relation to marriage equality in Australia. Before we get on to that, what made you get into the human rights space?
Sure, well, I've always been passionate about social justice, even at school, but also particularly at uni. I was involved in student politics, and then when I worked at Allen's, a law firm, I was exposed to doing refugee work and work for people experiencing homelessness through their pro bono practice. And I got a real taste for the way the law could be used to help make a positive change in people's lives. And I also got a bit sick of litigating, so dealing with the problems after things had happened. And then I had a fabulous opportunity to work for you in the law reform space, and that gave me even greater exposure to policy work and how you can reform the law to make positive social change.
And can you tell our students what sort of work the Human Rights Law Centre actually undertake?
Well, we work to protect and promote human rights across Australia. We work more deeply in a few key areas. They include LGBTI rights, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex rights, which is what I work on, but also issues facing Indigenous people, refugees and asylum seekers, and women's reproductive rights, for instance, and broader issues such as democratic rights and freedoms, and topics such as, well, one day we should have a National Human Rights Act in Australia. We also, I should say, are a bit different from community legal centres as they usually practice with high volume casework. We don't run a lot of cases. We run a small number of strategic cases each year, and we have a particular focus on public advocacy and law reform, and also using the United Nations in our work as well.
Well, you've already told us that you've worked at a top tier law firm. You've also been a federal court associate. I guess some of our students watching this will be starting off on their legal career thinking, oh, have I made the right choice? Why did you choose law in the first place?
Well, I was always interested in humanities at school, and law seemed like a pretty natural companion to those areas, and also offered the chance to be part of a profession which appealed to me. So I was a bit more vocational than studying humanities subjects. And when I got to uni, I really enjoyed my arts subjects, but also became quite interested in the practice of the law and, you know, having clients and helping people with legal problems. So the law really offered that.
So let's talk about the marriage equality debate, groundbreaking work that you did. How did your background as a lawyer actually help you in that campaign? Well,
I guess I should explain I'm also the co-chair of the Equality Campaign, so the National Campaign for Marriage Equality. So I had that broader role, but also have been working on marriage equality as an issue for a number of years at the Human Rights Law Centre. My law degree has helped me in the work on the legislation, so the legal policy side of things. That's making submissions, but also understanding things like, for instance, last year when those hostile amendments were moved by sort of no-side MPs to the Dean Smith bill, we could quickly understand, analyse and then brief members of Parliament on why they shouldn't support those amendments. But then also I've used my legal skills in running 2 High Court cases in relation to marriage, one around ACT legislation a few years ago, but also the recent case around the postal survey. So you can see the way law's been very useful in advancing this issue.
And can you give our students some insight, I guess, into the trials and tribulations of running such a high-profile national campaign?
The first thing to say is that I think we ran a really great campaign, and it was incredible to work with so many talented people. We had Tim Gartrell come in and work for that intensive period. He'd previously recognised the campaign around Indigenous constitutional recognition. So we had a really sort of wise head at the helm, but of course the campaign was sprung on us. We didn't know that we were having a postal survey. So for me personally, it was particularly stressful at the start, and it's because one day I was preparing for these High Court proceedings, getting the client together and the documents to actually file. But then at the same time, we were building, this first ever the first time we've had an issue like this and a process like this in Australia, a national vote on marriage equality. And we had to build the campaign, scale up our operations, and I'm the director on the board and the co-chair of that organisation. So doing all of this at once was personally very challenging, but in the end we got there, which was fantastic.
And how did you feel when you lost the original, High Court case to knock out the plebiscite? Was it expected? Was it difficult balancing that aspect of the matter and then, the campaign itself?
Well, first of all, I guess you never run a High Court case to lose. We always were running it to win, and nothing's ever guaranteed in the High Court. But we had a brilliant legal team, and we thought we were running really strong arguments, and we had not one but two legal teams, if you remember, running two cases in parallel. And so the court had every legal argument at its disposal, and it still found in favour of the government. So it was a case that we felt we had to run, and it was a case that the LGBTI community wanted us to run, but in the end it didn't get up. And that legal certainty was really important to allow, I think, as a community, us to pivot and prepare ourselves emotionally, but also sort of physically to run the campaign.
Well, you've received many awards for the amazing work you've done in relation to the LGBTI community. As a member of that community and as a female lawyer, have you encountered the glass ceiling in the past in your career?
Well, I have to say my sexuality hasn't been so much of an issue, but I can say that sexism was a problem in my career and still is, I think, in the legal profession more broadly. I certainly felt that as more of a barrier in my career path, and in those subtle ways that a sense you get, or in culture in particular organisations and firms, rather than anything too overt. But then towards, I guess, later on in my career, for instance, when I was working as an advisor to you.
And you're a very good advisor, I might say.
Thanks, Rob. Nice of you to say that. In areas such as LGBTI policy, I started to see my background as a benefit. So it meant that I could give you hopefully good advice on all the stakeholders in that community and the sorts of issues that they were facing, and then obviously going on to work in that area of policy and law reform at the Human Rights Law Centre. As a member of that community, I can do that job a whole lot better than if I wasn't. So what started out as something I think that I thought might hold me back ended up to be a positive, which is nice.
And what next for Anna Brown?
Well, for me, there's still a lot of issues left on the to-do list for the LGBTI community, even though marriage equality is seen by some as the end of the road. I think it's really important that we recognise there's many more steps that we have to take. And just to name a couple of issues, for transgender people and them having access to documents such as birth certificates that reflect the gender they live as, but also removing every last stain of discrimination from all the state and territory statute books as well. So we're not there yet, and hopefully I'll continue to play a role in those struggles in the future.
Fantastic. And finally, if you had one or two bits of advice to our students watching this, as I said, they're starting off on their legal career, what advice would that be?
Well, I guess a couple of things. Well, first of all, I know from being a law student myself that sometimes we have a tendency to be a little self-doubting and, shall we say, neurotic. So my advice would be to people, don't spend too much emotional energy sort of comparing yourself to other people. Just back yourself and believe in yourself and the fact that you will make a positive change in this world, and it's up to you to do that. The second bit of advice I'd offer is to, pursue every opportunity that you have that takes you closer to your career goal, whether that's volunteering or taking that internship or trying to squeeze in, that third job, which will give you. I'm thinking back to when I was trying to juggle 3 jobs during uni and study, but every opportunity you have just take it and try and explore it with 150%, because unless you do that, someone else will take that opportunity for you, and be open to possibility.
Well, there you go, students. What fantastic advice. Back yourself, you can make a real difference, you can achieve change, and use this course to take up every opportunity that's available to you. Great advice. Thanks, Anna. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Rob.